how do you deal with change, right? What are transitions? Transitions are different than changes. What are transitions and how do you navigate them? How do you get through this? And then we'll end with what are some of the questions you need to ask as you navigate a transition. All right. So let's take a look. So let's take a look at the next image. So I teach at the Drucker School of Management, and I think you all know that Peter Drucker is considered to be the founding father of the discipline of management. And he had this idea that you can't manage other people unless you manage yourself first, right? You have to manage yourself first. And in the next image is the companion idea that leadership is defined by result, right? So in the next image, you see these two ideas put together, right? That you have to do two things, right? That effective executives manage two contexts. They manage themselves, what's going on inside you, and they manage the outer context, which is the environment, relationships, results, and impact. And ideally, you do this in real time, right? And in most business education, we completely ignore the inner part, right? Or even we deride it. We call it soft skills or the touchy-feely or whatever. But I think, and then we generally tend to focus only on the outer game. So what does that mean for us, right? And I think at the 21st century, especially the last year and a half, we realized we need to be able to manage what goes on inside us in order for us to be effective in what goes on outside us. What's important here is that transitions are about changing the story of who you think you are, right? And or who your organization is. Now, I got interested in this because of my own life experience. All my work is really a kind of personal exploration of what it means to be alive. Nikki mentioned in the beginning, I was diagnosed 30 years ago with a incurable terminal illness and told that I had a 90% chance of dying within 5 years. And I don't know about what you were thinking about when you were 20, but mortality wasn't on my top 3. And I can remember leaving the hospital with my father saying, Dad, I guess 90% chance is good news because somebody's got to be in the 10%, right? Somebody's got to be in the 10%. And I decided that was going to be me. And, as I mentioned, half of my family is Japanese, and I was a Japanese studies major going through college. And I went and talked to my college professor. I said, this is what's happening to me. And he says, don't worry, Jeremy, everything's going to be okay. And he reaches into his desk and he pulls out this book, The 3 Pillars of Zen by Philip Kapleau. It was the first book in English to teach Westerners how to do Zen. What you have to know is that in Japan, Zen didn't come from California, right? Zen was the warrior's religion. And it helped them, I think, cultivate a kind of intense focus and fearlessness in the face of mortal threat so that they could do their job, basically. And as a young man, trying to make his way in the world, now suddenly wondering whether he was going to be alive or not, it gave me something to do with my mind, right? These practices gave me something to do with my mind, that I could manage my fear or anger or anxiety about living with this condition, and then also being able to have the skill to direct my energy to something that was nourishing or growth oriented, or so that I could create a life for myself. So long story short, I ended up living another 17 years after that. And in 2008, my kidneys were failing, and I had a kidney transplant at the end of 2008. 27 people came forward as donors, and 13 of them were my former students, and including my donor, who is an Amazon warrior of a woman. And as I was leaving the hospital, the reason I got interested in transition is because of this. As I was leaving the hospital, the doctor pushes into my palm a prescription for antidepressants. And I look at it and I said, what is this for? I've never been healthier, right? I've never been healthier. And I said, okay. And I put it in my pocket and I went on. Most organ rejection, happens within the first 3 months of the surgery. So for the first 3 months, I'm asking myself, am I going to be alive? Am I going to be alive? Am I going to be alive? And then we hit the 3-month mark and everything was okay. And for the next 6 months, I was telling myself, oh my God, I'm going to live. I'm going to live. I'm going to live. And then at the 9-month mark, everything shifted. And I'm going to live turned into, oh my God, I'm going to live. And I fell into this huge depression. And I remembered, oh, I had this thing in my pocket, right? This antidepressant. They knew it was going to happen. They knew it was going to happen, and they gave me these drugs to try to make it go away. Why was this happening, right? Why would a healthy person with a completely new lease on life suddenly fall into a major depression? And that's what we're going to talk about, right? Transitions begin with endings. Transitions begin with endings, right? And so in that case, the ending was the ending of the era of being a sick person. And in the next image, you'll see we are on our way to a new beginning. That's the ideal. That's the hope. But you notice there's this place in the middle, which we'll talk about in the next slide, right? Which is the place in between, right? And this is what makes the change or the transition process interesting. Because the person in between is no longer the caterpillar and they're not yet the butterfly, right? They aren't who they are going to be. They're in this middle period. And that's what makes it both, I think, for many people, a very terrifying experience, but it's also a very exciting one. And if you click on the image, right, for a lot of middle-aged men, it's the zone of expensive mistakes, right? So when I talked about that human development, adult development doesn't happen automatically, right? The child will get to its new beginning on its own. But for an adult, to get to the new beginning, you have to consciously cross through this place in between. All right? You have to consciously cross through this place in between. I'll give you the questions we need to ask ourselves. These are some, but these aren't all of them, but these are the big ones, right? Like, what's ended, right? What's ended? And do you accept the fact it's ended, right? And is there resistance there to that? And then if there's resistance there, what do you need to let go of, right? What do you need to let go of? And then what's the support system you have for yourself, right? Every successful leader I know has created a support system for themselves outside their family, right? Because usually their spouse doesn't want to talk about it, right? But so who is supporting you in your life? And I think that's the promise of what the Fortune Greece Network is creating for you. Like, how do you create a support system? Who do you talk to? Right? And then what new relationships can you forge? And what new capabilities do you need to learn how to do? And then what do you need to stop doing? And stop doing doesn't just mean physical action. It could also mean ways of thinking or assumptions, right? That you let go of. Stop behaving in this way. And then what do you need to start doing, right? In my own life, when I was going through this transition, I made a rule for myself, right? Moving toward the new beginning meant, I mean, it's too simplistic to say, it meant doing things I had never done before, right? Doing things I'd never done before because it was new, right? And who was I going to be going forward? So I made a rule for myself. Turn down no invitation. Go to a place you've never been and learn how to do things you don't know how to do. Right? And in expanding the palette of experience, you start to think, okay, what is attracting me? What is interesting to me? And then you follow your energy in that way.